Hello, welcome to our evening of spoken poetry, our second edition, which is again sponsored by the Watauga County Public Library in Boone, North Carolina. This year's theme is Dead Poets, Live Poets, the influence of one on the other. And to start, I am going to read a Russian poet, born in Siberia, Yevgeny Yevtushenko. I read this poem, People, when I was in college, and it has stayed with me ever since. And I would like you to see if you also think it's universal. It does not matter, I think, where Mr. Yevtushenko was born or lived, but just the idea that he put out in these lines. So let me read People by Yevgeny Yevtushenko. He was born in 1932 in Siberia. He died in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2017. No people are uninteresting. Their fate is like the chronicle of planets. Nothing in them is not particular, and planet is dissimilar from planet. And if a man lived in obscurity, making his friends in that obscurity, obscurity is not uninteresting. To each his world is private, and in that world one excellent minute, and in that world one tragic minute. These are private. In any man who dies, there dies with him his first snow and kiss and fight, it goes with him. There are left books and bridges and painted canvas and machinery whose fate is to survive. But what has gone is also not nothing. By the rule of the game, something has gone. Not people die, but worlds die in them. Whom we knew as faulty, the earth's creatures, of whom essentially what did we know? Brother of a brother, friend of friends, lover of lover, we who knew our fathers in everything, in nothing. They perish. They cannot be brought back. The secret worlds are not regenerated. And every time, again and again, I make my lament against destruction. That is Yevgeny Yevtushenko, and the line which has been often noted is, not people die, but worlds die in them.
Sister Mamie, from Emmett Till Mobley. Few souls in this world will ever be as strong as Mamie, Emmett Till's mother, who said, no, ain't no use in being ashamed now. Open that casket. Let everybody see this is what they did to my baby. Born breeched, not 3 seconds in my arms did they tell me to let him go, to send him away. So you know I had to hold on to him until the very end. And when the end came, I let the whole world hold him and weep for him because he was my baby. He was just a baby, and I did send him away, but it was just a summer vacation, and he was only 14, and he was supposed to come back home, still wearing his father's ring, smelling like his skin had seen every hour of the sun. He was supposed to come home and tell me about swimming in cool lakes at night in just his undergarments. The southern mosquitoes, how the bugs are bigger way down there. He should have never known the bottom of the Tallahatchie River. He was supposed to come home, my baby, not a corpse, the imprint of barbed wire fresh on his skin, cold in a pine box, sealed shut and snuck onto a train. They told me to give him up, and I did, only when I had to. And you know I had to do this in the way that I wanted to, with all that I had left. And that was the kind of choice that only a mother can make, the kind of choice that comes only from knowing a thing or two about magic. what it means to conjure a soul from the depths of nowhere, to labor for that soul. Mothers know that not a single person comes into this world, but instead are bled into it. So no, I couldn't let him leave silently. I couldn't let him leave so damn easy. These Poems by June Jordan. These poems, they are things that I do, in the dark, reaching for you, whoever you are, and, are you ready? These words, they are stones in the water, running away. These skeletal lines, they are desperate arms for my longing and love. I am a stranger, learning to worship the strangers around me. Whoever you are, whoever I may become.
Thank you to Mary Rose for this opportunity. I'm going to read from Walt Whitman, a poet very much alive in his work. Here are the first several sections of his poem, Song of Myself, from the first edition, 1855, of his book Leaves of Grass. I celebrate myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank, by the wood, and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. The smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, and buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of the hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice, words loose to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone or in the rush of the streets or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origins of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them for yourself. Here are two short poems of mine that relate to Walt Whitman. It is said and reported that Abraham Lincoln, when he was a lawyer in Springfield, Illinois, sometimes would pick up from his desk a copy of Leaves of Grass and read during office hours. The Interpreter. When Lincoln picked up Leaves of Grass and read aloud, his colleagues paused. Their legal chores could wait. To hear through him what Whitman said was something special. One thought Walt a bore, another dangerous, opinions veered. But now, in Lincoln's voice, I celebrate myself, came naturally forth, fresh and clear. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. Plain air, best perfumes? Well, that makes sense enough in Springfield, where Verbena traced the lanes. It compensates for lines that came out rough. And even those he gave an etiquette his partner and his clerk would not forget. And this last poem that I'll read is titled The Afghans. These are Afghans with a small a. Refers to a spread or shawl knitted or crocheted in a pattern of squares or strips. When winter comes, we reach the Afghans from the shelf and spread them on the bed. Admire again their interwoven blue with plum and sunflower with green. They still inspire our wonder at the patience they display and, lacking it, our good luck to fall their air. The temperature will plummet any day. We'll wrap ourselves in handmade layer by layer. You've taken thread and patched them as they aged, connecting yarns that parted from the strain of keeping heat in us as we have paged through Woolf and Whitman, Sappho and Montaigne, while blizzards made their case with blasts and squalls that piled blank drifts against the clapboard walls. Thank you.
I'm going to read one more poem by a dead poet. In this case, my late husband, Paul Carroll. While he was known as a fighter of censorship and a winner against censorship, I think he was an incredible poet. And I published this poem after he had died in the book Beats Me, Love, Poetry, and Censorship from Chicago to Appalachia. So this is Untitled by Paul Carroll. If I could make a poem as mysterious and simple as the sea, its silent undulation like the creases in the palm of God, the blues and greens, the colors of the words we try to find when talking of a love that counts. Those waves cracking against the rocks, making endless works of art. Then it might finally feel finished, the work that's been given me to do. We come from the ocean and we return to it, our hands full of poems like prayers.
Hi, my name is Linda Quinlan, and I'm going to read for my dead poet is one of my favorites, which is Sylvia Plath. I discovered her as a young woman, and I kind of always appreciated and really, really liked her work. I think I have a poem that fits really well with this, even though we're from very different classes. So Here is my poem from Sylvia Plath called The Applicant. First, are you our sort of person? Do you wear a glass eye, false teeth, or a crutch, a brace, or a hook? Rubber breasts or a rubber crotch? Stitches to show something is missing? No? No? Then how do we give you a thing? Stop crying, open your hand. Empty? Empty. Here is a hand to fill it and willing to bring teacups and roll away headaches and do whatever you tell it. Will you marry it? It is guaranteed to thumb shut your eyes at the end and dissolve of sorrow. We make a new stock from the salt. I notice you are stark naked. How about this suit? Black and stiff, but not a bad fit. Will you marry it? It is waterproof, shatterproof, proof against fire and bombs through the roof. Believe me, they'll bury you in it. Now your head, excuse me, is empty. I have a ticket for that. Come here, sweetie, out of the closet. Well, what do you think of that? Naked as a paper to start, but in 25 years she'll be silver, in 50 gold, a living doll, everywhere you look. It can sew, it can cook, it can talk, talk, talk. It works. There is nothing wrong with it. You have a hole, it's a poultice. You have an eye, it's an image. My boy, it's your last resort. Will you marry it? Marry it, marry it. And for my poem, from my collection in Chelsea Creek, I'm going to read a poem called Chelsea, Mass. And Chelsea, Mass is a small town just outside of Boston, very working class. And so this is a poem about my favorite aunt, and it's called Chelsea, Mass. Then, as her February birth, my Aunt Evie swayed with every half tone the spontaneous steps of a child living outside Newfoundland, the fishing village of her family's past. This wasn't New Orleans, where she might have had a chance, where anger and creativity collide. This was Chelsea, a city of bad daughters and warlike sons, where nothing grew but immigrants and hunger. Her father's madness beckoned him to an ocean death, but instead he crawled into dementia soaked in beer and sadness, the smell of urine, even when he slept. My aunt married one summer a man from the war in Europe. His pale violence swelling out of every room made her a ghost. She danced at home over the kitchen tiles that curled in the corners. She danced in circles while her daughter slept. Until her husband took their child away, punishing her dance, commanded a beat from the suburbs, and snapped his fingers again and again and again, even making her suicide seem clumsy.
Hi, my name is John Kozlowski, and I'd like to thank Mary Rose Carroll for inviting me to speak today and read some poems. I'm going to read a couple of poems. I'm going to read one by Wisława Szymborska, Polish Nobel laureate, poem called The End and the Beginning, and a poem that I wrote called War and Peace, and it's a response to that poem. We've all been following the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. My 12-year-old granddaughter is following it, and my 97-year-old father-in-law, who was at D-Day, is following it, and my friend Bob Malevsky, who hasn't followed the news since 1963, is following it. On the news this morning, I heard that even though most Americans don't know where Ukraine is, 90% of them are anxious about it. And We all know what the cause of that anxiety is. We're all afraid that it's going to escalate into World War III. Excuse me. The war started 3 weeks ago, and there doesn't seem to be a quick stop to it coming up. The Russians are increasing the things that their attacks on the Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are fighting back harder and harder and harder. So I was surprised this morning when a friend of mine sent me a copy of Szymborska's poem, "The End and the Beginning." I love her writing, and I very much admire this poem. But I feel its optimism doesn't fully express what happens when a war ends. When I first read her poem, I sat down and wrote a poem called War and Peace. It's in my book, Echoes of Tattered Tongues, a book of poems about my parents and their experiences in this as Nazi slave laborers, German slave laborers in a German camp during World War II. Here is Szymborska's poem. My response will follow it, and I'll let you judge which poem gives a more accurate sense of what happens when war ends. The End and the Beginning by Wisława Szymborska. After every war, someone has to clean up. Things won't straighten themselves up after all. Someone has to push the rubble to the side of the road so the corpse-filled wagons can pass. Someone has to get mired in scum and ashes, sofa springs, splintered grass, and bloody rags. Someone has to drag in a girder to prop up a wall. Someone has to glaze a window, rehang a door. Photogenic it's not, and it takes years. All the cameras have left for another war. We'll need the bridges back and new railway stations. Sleeves will go ragged from rolling them up. Someone, broom in hand, still recalls the way it was. Someone else listens and nods with unsevered head. But already there are those nearby starting to mill around who will find it dull. From out of the bushes, sometimes someone still unearths rusted out arguments and carries them to the garbage pile. Those who knew what was going on here must make way for those who know little, and less than little, and finally, as little as nothing. In the grass that has overgrown causes and effects, someone must be stretched out, blade of grass in his mouth, gazing at the clouds. Here's my poem, War and Peace. War and Peace. War will kill you and leave you cold in the street or in the fields, broken in the rubble of bombed buildings. But don't worry. Peace will come and bury you and sit over you weeping like your mother, praying for you, pleading for your return. She'll whisper to you like when you were a boy in the stream washing your hands and face before breakfast. She will weep until God brings a miracle, you risen again in golden rays and singing birds. And then war will return and kill you. Thank you.
Good evening. Again, I'm back to end this particular program with my own version of a live Poet My Poem that I'm going to read to you. And I'm from North Carolina, so is Taylor Young. The rest of our poets, Dan Campion has come from Iowa. Linda Quinlan from Vermont. Neil has come from Massachusetts. And John has come from, Kozlowski has come from Virginia. So we're spread out all over. But this is the end of our Dead Poet, Live Poet evening. And I'm going to read a poem that has to do with our future. It's a prayer, so to speak, for our future. My poem is titled Send a love letter to the earth. So easily the earth could weave our shroud with moss, tree tendrils, and fungal mound. George's Gap Road rails now barely seen, smothered by earth's green. Anything built by man can be destroyed by Mother Nature. Guard posts anchored in earliest land, Greenville Mountain 4 billion years stand along this Appalachian creek. My 70 years are weak. We ourselves are dust of the earth. It's a still, subtle war the planet is waging while it feeds us, while it is saving. No banners, waving flags, or drumming, just floods, fires, and drought coming. Mother Nature will get you if you don't watch out. In Iran, by the Persian Gulf, it may not matter whether you are Sunni, Shiite, or Israeli. When temperatures rise to 163 or more, Syrians drop from heat more than from the Civil War. Stifling. This day is stifling. Vote, heart, hand, and will, not for limitless expansion of endless ill. The newest gadget, bigger car, any perversion. More plastic bottles, bag-clogging turtle insertions. We are so adept at creating harm. Are we daughters and sons with earthly glory? Do we think we could live in a laboratory? Have we given our powers away, lost our birth, to know, walk in, salute, love the earth? Send a love letter to the earth. Again, thank you so much for being with us for this program. We all enjoy doing it and hope that you took some pleasure, maybe some education from it. And again, we were sponsored by the Watauga County Public Library in Boone, North Carolina. But as I said, the poets reading in this program, they are from various locations: Massachusetts, Vermont, Virginia, North Carolina, and Iowa. So spread out over a good distance. But take care and send a love letter to the earth.